us to understand hearing loss and the impact of hearing loss, we first need to know what is normal hearing and how does the ear work. So we'll go into the basic anatomy of the ear. We have three main components. The outer ear, which consists of the part of the ear that's on the head, plus the ear canal, otherwise known as the external auditory meatus. We have the middle ear, and this is a air-filled cavity that quite often is filled with fluid, and then the doctor will treat it with antibiotics, and sometimes they need pressure equalization tubes. And lastly, we have the inner ear, and this is what we know as the cochlea. And if hearing loss occurs in the inner ear, most often we treat that with amplification, which is what this training is about. How to treat and work with children who have hearing loss in the inner ear, who wear amplification devices, and strategies that we can use in the classroom. So what is hearing loss? A definition of hearing loss. Hearing loss is a deficit in the hearing due to some problem in either the outer ear, the middle ear, or the inner ear. Some are congenital causes when a baby is simply born with a hearing loss that may be progressive over time. It could be due to genetic causes or just heredity causes. Other times it may be due to prolonged exposure to noise, and even children nowadays that enjoy hunting or four-wheel riding and their music are often exposed to loud noises at very young ages. The natural aging process will also cause hearing loss. That's why so many older people have hearing aids compared to children. Ototoxic medicine such as Lasix, even aspirin, antibiotics, and certain cancer-fighting drugs may also cause hearing loss. And then illness or trauma due to the head can also cause hearing loss in the inner ear. Now we record hearing thresholds. That's the level you can hear sound very, very softly on what we call an audiogram. An audiogram is a graph that measures the amount of hearing that a person has. It measures what we call the softest sound they can detect 50% of the time. It measures it in loudness or decibels as well as pitch. That's the frequency. So we want to know how soft they can hear sound in the low pitches all the way to the high pitches. This is a picture of a graph known as the audiogram. The sounds at the very top of the graph up here are very, very soft sounds. Over on the left side of the graph is the low frequency sounds, and on the right side of the graph are the high frequency sounds. As you look down the graph, the sounds become louder and louder, so that if they have a hearing loss that's very profound, their hearing thresholds will be plotted at the bottom of the graph. I do have a picture of just common environmental sounds as well as speech sounds to show you where they occur on the audiogram. So soft sounds are at the top. That's like the water dripping, the leaves rustling, and the birds chirping. But loud sounds are down at the very bottom of the graph, and that would be the jet airplane, the hammer, and sounds such as that. Conversational speech sounds are what we are most concerned with as audiologists, and they are in the mild to moderate range. Your vowel sounds are louder than your F, S, and TH, which are very soft sounds. We look at hearing loss and how it impacts a child's speech development and speech understanding. So when we as an audiologist look at an audiogram, we try to figure out what they can hear and what they cannot hear with their hearing loss. And then we want to try to amplify the sounds that they cannot hear so that they can now have them accessible to them. Everything on top of that line represents their hearing loss. Everything above the line is grayed out to them. They cannot hear those sounds without some type of amplification device, but they can hear the sounds underneath the line. For example, as she does not have access, if they have that hearing loss, to the P, H, F, S, and TH, they may not hear the word fish or sis, but they do have access to the M, B, and the vowel sounds, so they could hear the word mad and bad. That's why with certain types of hearing loss, people will often complain, I can hear you, but I don't understand you. They may be able to hear the M, the B, and the A, but they couldn't hear the TH and the S. So if you say it's time to take a bath, they could hear the ba, but not the TH. The first step in treating hearing loss and its effects on language development and learning is amplification. The most common amplification options are hearing aids, cochlear implants if hearing aids do not make sound loud enough, and then some type of other assistive technology such as an FM system, which you would see quite often in the school system. Common myths that people often believe regarding hearing aids and cochlear implants is that once the child has either a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, it restores perfect hearing because it's the perfect solution. And hearing aids do not work like eyeglasses. You do not get a restoration to 20/20 hearing like you would with your vision. Therefore, even with the hearing aid and the cochlear implant, and we have simulations of this later on in the training. However, even with those devices, they will still have some type of distortion. For example, you can hear me perfectly right now if you have normal hearing, but a sensory neural hearing loss may sound like this. My voice is muffled and it's a little bit softer. With a hearing aid, you should be able to hear me better. You should be able to hear me better, but it's still not as crisp and as clear as you can hear me now. That's what hearing aids do. They make the sound louder, but they don't necessarily restore that crispness, because that happens inside of the cochlea, which is still damaged. Another common myth is that once a child receives his hearing aids or cochlear implants, he can hear perfectly like his peers. So often, teachers and other professionals and parents who interact with the child think, well, Johnny can hear this in background noise and follow all these instructions. He has his hearing aids on, Billy does, so therefore Billy should be able to do the same thing that Johnny does, who does not need hearing aids. And that is not true. At a distance and in background noise with rooms that are big, that have poor acoustics, those hearing aids will amplify all of that as well as the person talking, and he cannot pick out who that person is to be able to attend for lengthy portions of time to that voice, which is why we also augment hearing aids and cochlear implants with FM systems in the classroom. Lastly, one thing that I really have to counsel parents on is that quite often they believe that once a child receives his hearing aids and cochlear implants, he'll start talking immediately, so that we fit them with hearing aids. They come to me to therapy, and even after a month, he's still not talking, and the parent's a little bit frustrated and concerned. And I have to keep telling them that the moment they have good access to sound with well-fit hearing aids, well-mapped cochlear implants, that begins day one of their language and auditory development. If a child is born, that birthday begins day one of their auditory listening and their language development, and it may be 12 months later of listening and making sense of sound and speech before they even say their first word. That is the expectations that we can have with children once they begin day one of their auditory development, which occurs with well-fit hearing aids or cochlear implants.